King Edward VII. What does it take to be a king? Duty, honor, sacrifice, the weight of a nation on your shoulders, a crown, a scepter, Westminster Abbey. Now, what does it take to be a playboy? Charm, audacity, a taste for champagne, and an absolutely legendary lack of shame. A bubbling champagne glass, a vintage Parisian street sign, a shadowy silhouette in a doorway. This is the story of King Edward VII, the heir to Queen Victoria's vast, stoic empire, and the monarch who dedicated an entire pew in Westminster Abbey to his mistresses. A king whose official duties were often interrupted by unofficial scandals, from duels and courtroom dramas to custom-made furniture that still baffles historians. His mother blamed him for his father's death, his subjects dreaded his reign, and Europe knew him by a nickname that said it all. This is the story of the Playboy King. Strap in, because history has never been this delightfully disgraceful. The Playboy King, Edward VII's scandalous reign. But before we begin, like and subscribe. The weight of a crown is immense. The greatest sovereigns in history have always balanced duty with grace, viewing their role as both a privilege and a burden. And then we have this figure, the heir to Queen Victoria, a monarch famed for her loyalty to Prince Albert and the strict propriety of her era. King Edward VII seems an unlikely candidate for perpetual scandal, yet Bertie excelled at it. From near duels with Winston Churchill's father to liaisons that might have hastened his own father's death, no vice was beneath him. So now we explore the strange tale of Edward VII, the disgraceful king who nearly ruined his own rule. All set for Edward? The prince was a relentless womanizer from his youth, prompting his parents to enroll him in the military at age 19. They aimed to instill discipline in their wayward son, who struggled to apply himself to his education. So, when Bertie's comrades smuggled the actress Nellie Clifton into his rooms, his father felt compelled to intervene. A furious Prince Albert wrote to him, "I knew you were impulsive and shallow, but I did not believe you were corrupt." Standard parental disappointment. When Albert died from typhoid fever just weeks later, a grieving Queen Victoria held her son responsible, claiming Albert had succumbed to a heartbreak induced by Bertie's actions. If this involved anyone else, perhaps the young prince would have reformed his ways. That is not how things unfolded. His father's death only amplified his reckless behavior. Clifton was merely the start of Bertie's infamous escapades. Beyond the numerous French brothels he frequented, Bertie's pursuits included actresses, models, social climbers, and even women of noble birth. One entanglement forced Bertie to testify in the divorce trial of Sir Charles Mordaunt after the baronet's wife admitted to an encounter with the prince. Having one's private life exposed in open court, a true scandal indeed. King Edward VII of Britain, nicknamed Bertie, was Queen Victoria's son and the era's most legendary libertine. He was a true rake, charming a staggering number of women. He even commissioned custom furniture, a chaise de volupté, to facilitate meetings with multiple partners simultaneously. We'd call that a waterbed today. Naturally, the most dedicated rakes devised the finest and most original methods for their indulgent pastimes. The future King Edward VII proved no different. Bertie maintained a private room at the celebrated Paris brothel Le Chabonnet. There, a copper bathtub stood, adorned with figures that were half woman, half swan, a sort of swan-person hybrid, a swantor, if you will. Bertie famously liked to bathe in this tub after filling it with champagne and female companions. We pity the soul tasked with cleaning it, but one must admit the king had imagination. Besides the swan tub, Bertie possessed another curious furnishing, a love seat. and we mean that literally, a siège d'amour, or love chair. This seat was built to Bertie's specifications, designed to support his considerable size. His wife later dubbed him Tom Tom due to his girth, and to allow him to entertain several women with minimal exertion, because nothing says romance like announcing you won't be making much of an effort. The chair featured 2 upholstered seats and 2 pairs of bronze stirrups. This configuration has, to put it mildly, puzzled contemporary experts. History professor Richard Thompson remarked, "Heaven only knows how it was meant to be used. One looks at it with astonishment. We might have a theory or two, Professor. It may seem improbable that a man with so many paramours could remain with one for decades. But Alice Keppel was Bertie's principal mistress for a full 20 years, their relationship ending only with his passing. Keppel was rather well liked, and many said she improved the king's temperament. Her influence was such that she was permitted to visit Bertie as he lay dying, the only royal mistress granted that access. However, writer Catherine Arnold suggested this was not due to the Queen's compassion, but because Keppel was causing a commotion, pounding on the palace gates and insisting on entry. Since every first-hand witness has now departed for that great siège d'amour in the hereafter, we may never confirm which account is accurate. Keppel's line endures. She is the great-grandmother of Camilla, Duchess of Cornwall, who married Prince Charles, Bertie's great-great-grandson. Notably, Camilla was the third party in Prince Charles's marriage to Princess Diana before their divorce. It seems a propensity for royal controversy is hereditary. Bertie was exceptionally active in France, involving himself with Paris's most celebrated actresses, nobles, and courtesans, often within his preferred brothel and its famed champagne tub. One moniker he acquired on his travels through the city's districts was Edward the Caresser. It has a ring to it. Bertie's notoriety was so widespread that during his European tours, women would openly make advances. However, Bertie's taste always leaned toward the extravagant Parisian establishments where he could lounge in champagne and admire his personal heraldry, which adorned the lavish room he kept at Le Chabonnet. It's rather like having a self-portrait mounted above the headboard. With so many dangerous liaisons, Bertie was destined to face consequences for at least one. Instead, he faced repercussions for many. Among the women Bertie courted was Lady Randolph Spencer Churchill, a prosperous American socialite and the future mother of Winston Churchill. When her husband, Lord Randolph, discovered the relationship, he attempted to extort the prince. The incensed Playboy prince was so furious he demanded a duel with Lord Randolph, though he had either honestly or conveniently neglected that his own father had banned the practice, so the confrontation never occurred. A resentful Bertie fell back on exiling Randolph and Jenny from polite society, which once more might have been his objective from the start. It is nearly impossible for even an expert to analyze the psyche of someone who passed away over a century ago. Yet it was rather evident that Bertie harbored considerable resentment toward his mother, Queen Victoria. And honestly, much of the world found issue with Queen Victoria. Mother and son never truly reconciled. Victoria held Bertie responsible for Albert's passing, and she continued to grieve for her husband until her own death. As Catherine Arnold writes in her book, Edward VII, the Prince of Wales and the Women He Loved, every woman Bertie pursued was the total antithesis of his stern, sorrowful mother. They were affectionate, giving, and vivacious, nothing like the woman who devoted her life to mourning. Still, Victoria never truly favored Bertie even before Albert's death. After learning of his first indiscretion, she wrote, "Oh, that boy, I never can or shall look at him without a shudder." In other words, she likely did not gift him that love chair. Beyond his boudoir-centered pursuits, Bertie also had a fondness for practically every other form of revelry. He indulged in drinking, smoking, and eating, each to extreme degrees. He wasn't nicknamed Tum Tum without cause. The future king also felt no embarrassment regarding his adventures. At his coronation, he reserved an entire pew in Westminster Abbey for his particular female friends. Today, this appears inconceivable. But at the time, well, it was also inconceivable. Edward was viewed as a crude and greedy man, whom no one wished to see assume power due to the disgrace he would bring upon the monarchy. And yet, there existed no alternative. One did not elect the king. However, due to his lifelong routine of surrendering to countless vices, by the time he finally ascended to the English throne, he remained there for only 9 years. And so, after just 9 years on the throne, the Playboy king was gone. The champagne bubbles went flat. The special chair sat empty. An era of unparalleled scandal quietly closed. But here's the lingering question, the ghost that haunts this entire gilded, disgraceful story. Was Edward VII a failure, a man so weakened by vice that he barely left a mark? On one side, a list of his scandals materializes in elegant, damning script. On the other, a list of his few diplomatic achievements appears. Or was he, in his own shocking way, a secret success, a pressure valve for a stifled nation, a king whose very notoriety modernized the monarchy simply by making it human, flawed, reckless, undeniably, irresistibly human? The lists fade, replaced by a single, powerful, lingering image. Edward's eyes. Looking knowingly from a portrait, he redefined what it meant to wear the crown, not by adding to its glory, but by exposing the fragile, all-too-mortal person underneath it. And in doing so, he paved a very peculiar path, a path of personal scandal that would wind its way right through his own bloodline for generations to come. A slow pullback from Edward's portrait, revealing it hanging on a wall. The camera continues back, and we see in the shadows of the same hall portraits of later descendants, hinting at the echoes of scandal in future reigns. So we leave you with this. Look at his story and decide, was he the last gasp of reckless royalty, or the first blueprint for the modern, messy monarchy we know today?